Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Martian. Whenever I hear people talk about how there's not enough films for adults, and Hollywood doesn't really make films for adults, I always think, well, that's not true, like, at all. They do, you're just not seeing them. But what they really mean is Hollywood isn't making big movies for adults, and for the most part, Hollywood doesn't so much anymore. I mean, there are a few a year, but not very many. And if they do, they're depressing or existential or darker or grittier. They're not the kind of made-for-adult films that Hollywood used to make, that would be full of spirit, full of life, that would be fun, that wouldn't be adult in the sense that, you know, having lots of sexy time and darker themes that kids couldn't handle. They would be adult in terms of their ideas. And we don't have enough films like that, frankly. Even though you might like those darker, grittier films, and I'm not saying they're necessarily bad films, but we definitely needed something that was the different kind of adult film. And The Martian comes along and is very much that kind of a film that audiences need right now. It is a big Hollywood movie that's very much full of adult, smart, intelligent ideas, and it's about survival. It's about the hope and faith in humanity and faith in intelligence and all the great things that mankind can do, that Doctor Who goes on long speeches about at the end of the newer Doctor Who episodes. It's all of that, but not as bad as those speeches, and it has all that life in it, and it's an enjoyable, audience-friendly, big, intelligent kind of adult movie, but not one that's going to bore you, one that's going to excite you. And I think The Martian is the kind of movie that audiences have really been waiting for. A film that shows the best of what Hollywood can do. A film that shows the classicness of Hollywood and the refinedness that made people fall in love with Hollywood in the first place. And science fiction and just stories in general. It's really just kind of like a very finely made, very Hollywood motion picture at the height of their powers. Mark Watney, who's played by Matt Damon, who is an astronaut who has been sent to Mars with a group of explorers to find things out about Mars, and we've been sending manned missions to Mars, I guess, for a couple of years, and then there's a storm coming, and Mark Watney is presumed to be dead after he is hit with a telecommuter satellite, and it looks like he died. They have to leave because the storm is going to destroy their equipment and stop them from being able to leave, so they do in fact leave Mars and think he is dead, but he is not dead, and he has to find a way to survive on Mars until hopefully someone can pick him up or send him more supplies. And at first it looks very hopeless. He has enough food for a certain amount of time, but not forever, and then he goes and starts planting his own food. He starts growing crops, he communicates with Earth and shows them that he is still there, and Earth tries to reach out to him and hopefully get him back, as it's become a major news story as he is trying to survive. They try to figure out scientifically how to get Mark Watney off Mars and back to Earth. You don't see a lot of films that are about the survival of the human spirit and really the gloriousness of humanity and what we've accomplished as a species and how amazing that is. The Martian really gets into that in a very hopeful, amazing, fun, joyous way. And in a way that's not like too hokey. It's very much done in a very classic Hollywood way. And a script by Drew Goddard, who previously wrote and directed Cabin in the Woods. And he wrote a really great screenplay. He particularly writes great dialogue for everyone, but Matt Damon especially really just steals the show. It's a classic Hollywood star vehicle, the way he plays it, and it is a role, and a lot of people have said it, but it's so true. It reminds you of why you like Matt Damon in the first place. It's a little weird because I think when I was complaining earlier in the review about how adult films are often gritty and dark, and I think Matt Damon's very much known for the Bourne films, which really started our kind of post 9/11 action genre that kind of influenced everything after that. That was his kind of a star vehicle, and this is the first one where it's more of like a Jimmy Stewart role, an everyman role, a role that anyone can identify with, and it shows you how likable he is. It's not just about him, you know, being kick-ass and awesome. I mean, it is a little about that. It shows you how awesome he can be as a movie star and how amazing it is that he is a movie star and the gloriousness to that. It's really a movie star role. In a lot of ways, this movie is bigger than him, which is, I think, one of the more interesting things about it. You could connect this to, it was like 2 years ago, there was a wave of kind of survival films where someone was by themselves, whether it's All Is Lost or Gravity or Captain Phillips. All these people had to get out of these very tense, extreme situations. And The Martian, which its timeline lasts a lot longer than all of those films, is a lot more fun, and it doesn't get into that more thrilling darkness to it, that it plays so much like a fun Hollywood film. You don't really think about all the existential problems to it, and when it does do that, it sells it very well. Matt Damon almost knows how to do a star vehicle at this point. Like, he's a very trained actor, he's been doing this for a very long time, and there's kind of precision to what he's doing, but it almost feels like a very traditional star vehicle while also not really being just about him at all. He's really the spirit of the movie. He really keeps you up, he keeps you into it, he keeps you going, and the speed of this film, it's like almost 3 hours long, does not feel that way, because as soon as they reach one problem, they get to another problem, they get to another problem, and you know, you could say this film is so pro-science, it's pretty awesome. And pro-science in an amazing way. This is a lot better than Interstellar. And that film was pro-science, but I think this is more pro-science in the way it feels like these are problems, like we need to solve this together as a committee. We'll figure out this problem, and then, oh, well, then we have a problem with this thing. We can't get this satellite up. What if we do this? And it feels like a film that will inspire. Now, you don't really know what films are going to inspire and what will be influential. When Star Trek came out, nobody thought it would create basically almost all the scientists in the world now watch Star Trek. And it was hugely influential. And I don't know if The Martian will. I mean, who knows? But it feels like a film that can spark that. When you leave, you feel inspired. You feel like someone will see this and do something great with mankind because of the influence this film left. Maybe it won't. Maybe they'll forget about it and say, well, that was a nice time at the movies. And honestly, you can say all that highfalutin shit and maybe it'll be true, but who knows? But it has that vibe in it. It has that entrenched in its soul, and not in a pretentious way, in a very inspiring way, but in an inspiring, fun way. Drew Goddard, the way he does the script, he also used to write for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That kind of quippy, quick dialogue that doesn't take you out of it, but also doesn't let you dwell in everything that's going on. He keeps it light, he keeps it fun, even in sequences that anyone else would play up for the thrills. The Martian almost plays as almost an antithesis to everything else that's been going on in space movies, where everyone else wants to kind of do a 2001 thing, and this is like, well, what if we Hollywood it up? And I really like that about The Martian, almost mostly because of its juxtaposition, but also because it's a hell of a good time, and because of its hopeful humanity can achieve things message. I think that's a great message. It's a wonderful message, and it's one that's not beating you down with crazy ideas and twist endings. It's doing it with you seeing how they solve this problem. It almost feels realistic, you know, the way they speak technical jargon, the way Matt Damon talks it. Specifically, he says it so easily, you're like, oh, I understand this world, I can relate to this world. One of the weirdest things about this movie is that it's directed by Ridley Scott. This doesn't feel like a Ridley Scott movie. It's shot like a Ridley Scott movie, but there's no like weird slow-mo shit or artistically slow-mo things. Matt Damon having flashbacks of Earth. I don't expect this kind of a film from an older director, and maybe this is the year that shows us that the older director isn't someone we should count out as much as we certainly do. Not to say that everyone just likes younger directors because they're younger directors, but most older directors, when they're winding down their filmography, it's honestly usually not as good. It's not an ageism thing, it's a this movie sucks thing. And with Mad Max Fury Road and this, it kind of shows you like, wow, there's a kind of a professionalism and a intelligence. This doesn't feel like a screenplay that Ridley Scott would do. And that's kind of what's so cool about it. It made me have faith in him. It's more so most of the stuff he's done recently that I haven't had as much faith in as I used to with Blade Runner and Aliens. This almost shows him as more of an assembly line director, but an older Hollywood director who understands how to do that and how to use that. It still makes it look gorgeous. He knows how to use all these actors, and he has an incredible cast. This has an absolutely incredible cast, from Jessica Chastain to Sean Bean to Jeff Daniels to Kristen Wiig to Chiwetel Ejiofor, even people in smaller roles like Donald Glover and Kate Mara and Sebastian Shaw, and Michael Pena, of course, has an amazing performance, as he always does. And Ridley Scott seems to know how to use each of these people very well. They almost do feel like mouthpieces. They don't really get to do what Matt Damon gets to do in this movie, but they're also very important important. They don't show anyone as good or bad. These are just problems they have to solve. The Jeff Daniels character, there's a certain part where he is kind of bringing up that maybe they should leave him there, or maybe they shouldn't do this or that. And you kind of understand that he's both protecting NASA, that he's not saying no out of selfish or political reasons, but also political reasons because he has to save NASA. If this turns out badly, could this stop X amount of other expeditions? Ridley Scott does that so well. It's almost like a different Ridley Scott, which I think is one of the cooler things about it. It shows you don't see this kind of Hollywood direction anymore. Very intelligently, in a very Hollywood studio system way, but using the glory of that. And in the classic Hollywood sense, I think that's probably the thing I love so much about this, is it does feel like an old school, like hard science, kind of boring science fiction film, but it's a lot of fun, and like there's music in it, and I could tell the audience was really into it, and it was a very audience-friendly movie, and it was a very thrilling movie. While not really letting go, it feels like a page-turner of a movie. It feels like a guilty pleasure that you can't believe you've been stuck in it so long, but it also feels very smart. In a film that isn't about the good guys and the bad guys, a film that's about solving problems and getting this guy off of Mars, hopefully. Doing a star vehicle in there also, and showing how cool Mars looks. Well, they didn't shoot this on Mars, but how cool the fake Mars looks, and how cool Ridley Scott just makes like simple board meetings look in some places. It's not the most challenging film, but I think one of the things The Martian does is it restores my faith in science fiction, because we sometimes get a little too wrapped up in, and maybe Hollywood in general, we get too wrapped up in being dark and gritty and being bogged down by our everyday lives and what's going on in the world. And I'm not trying to be an isolationist and ignore those things, but I think there used to be a time where we would acknowledge how great things can be and how great humanity coming together could be. We've probably gotten away too far from that, and The Martian reminds me how really awesome that can be, and how fun it is to see an audience really feel like they're together on something. And it uses why the studio system is put into place and that kind of filmmaking. Studios aren't perfect, and the Hollywood studio system is wrong as it is right, and there's a lot of things people don't like about the way films are made. But I think this is the kind of film that is hopeful and amazing and awesome and inspiring, and not in a cheesy way, in a fun, I can sit back and watch an entertaining movie kind of a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And it surprised me in terms of Ridley Scott's direction. This is a fun sci-fi movie, a fun science, I guess it's not really science fact, but most of it's science fact kind of sci-fi movie, and showing you how awesome that can be, how inspiring that can be, and how much fun that can be to watch. And that's the cool thing about The Martian, is it's a great sci-fi movie, but it's probably an even better Hollywood movie. And science is the shit out of all of us. So if you have seen The Martian and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.